All right, so let's start with the big story that we are tracking on WION at this hour. The Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that he is ready for talks with Ukraine on the basis of an aborted deal that Moscow and Kiev had reached in Istanbul back in 2022. He's also claimed that China, India and Brazil could act as mediators. Now, his comments have come just a month following the incursion into Russia's Kursk region by Ukraine. Now, it's been over 2 years and 6 months since Russia's invasion into Ukraine after the deadly strike on Poltava claimed 51 lives. It has now carried out attacks even in far western places such as Lviv, killing at least about 7 people. With the conflict showing no signs of de-escalation, speaking at the Eastern Economic Forum in the Russian city of Vladivostok, the Russian President Vladimir Putin said that he has never refused peace talks.
If there'll be a wish to hold negotiations, we will not refuse. But we'll do this on the basis of the agreements that were fixed in Istanbul. Our friends, partners, who, I believe, are sincerely interested in resolving all issues related to this conflict. This is primarily the People's Republic of China, Brazil, India. I'm constantly in contact with our colleagues on the issue, and I have no doubts that the leaders of these countries, we have a trusting relationship with them, sincerely strive to help, understand all the details of this complex process.
Now, speaking about Ukraine's Kursk incursion, Putin said that Ukraine had tried to divert the attention of Russia's troops but has failed, adding that Russia's primary goal is to liberate the entire of the Donbas region. All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what these comments by the Russian president, of course, mean, we're now being joined by Mr. Fred Weir, who's a journalist and a political commentator and is joining us on this broadcast from Moscow. Mr. Weir, it's pretty interesting what Vladimir Putin has just said, where he said that he is in fact open to negotiations provided the template is what was agreed to in Istanbul, just in the aftermath of this war. And he's also interestingly pointed out that he would like to see China, India and Brazil as potential mediators. What's your take on this?
Well, it's certainly not entirely new. He's, as he said himself, never refused peace talks. He's always said he's up and ready for them. But it is new to be so explicit about those abortive talks that did produce a draft agreement and was derailed more than 2 years ago. And also explicitly saying he would invite mediation from a country like India or China or Brazil. I think there's very little incentive on the battlefield for Putin to seek negotiations right now. Russia is speeding up its advances in the Donbass, and Ukraine's Kursk offensive has stalled. And there are other signs that there is a tipping point coming where perhaps around the Battle of Pokrovsk, which is coming up, Ukrainian defenses might totally collapse. You do see a certain amount of panic in Kiev, this massive reshuffling of cabinet posts in the middle of a war cannot signify any good news in Kiev. And also Zelensky is planning to go to Washington now to propose Ukraine's peace plan. That's what he calls it, a peace plan, which mainly seems to be it mainly seems to involve getting the United States to use all its diplomatic influence to bring the whole world to bear on Russia to make concessions. So I think that's why Putin did single out countries like India, China, and Brazil, because although they've been very understanding, I think Russia regards them as good friends, they've all made it clear to him in private, at least, and you know this, but India has said that India wants to see this war ended.
Right.
And on the terms of United Nations Charter, that is respecting territorial integrity and sovereignty. This is important to all those countries, and so that would be, for Washington and Ukraine, a reason to try to bring those countries into a peace process which would be mediated by them.
Mr. Veer, I think it's interesting that you're saying that the basis of any negotiations could be what is there in the United Nations Charter of respecting territorial sovereignty. Now, Russia, in the course of this war, has annexed 4 regions in Ukraine, and Ukraine has said that the only way that it can negotiate is if Russia were to vacate from those 4 regions that have been annexed by Moscow. Do you think Moscow would want to negotiate something on those lines where it is pushed back from these 4 regions?
Well, it's extraordinary that Putin did mention that, March 22 agreement, because that did involve going back to the pre-war borders, which were deep inside the Donbass. I don't think that Putin is prepared to negotiate that way at the moment. He may use some elements of that Istanbul agreement, but basically he has said those 4 regions will be annexed to Russia. In fact, the Russian constitution now says that they're part of Russia. So I think that Putin is maneuvering here to make sure that these very important countries, India, China, Brazil, South Africa, do not defect to the American peace process. He's offering them a route for total influence, mediation, and so on, in which Russia would be happily participating.
Right, and also very quickly, because negotiations require 2 sides, do you think the Ukrainians who are backed by the Americans are willing to negotiate at this moment as things stand on the battleground? Because the West, the talk that you hear, is of more escalation and providing more weapons for the Ukrainians.
That does not seem to be the case at the moment. The war is going on. There are some very critical moments coming. The Battle of Pokrovsk, which is imminent now, will tell us exactly who is going to win this war, and I'm pretty sure it's Russia. And at that point, peace talks will take on a very different complexion.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Fred Veer, for joining us and getting us that perspective there. Moment as we speak, where Vladimir Putin has again expressed a willingness to negotiate. But the question, of course, is what will be the terms of negotiations? What will be the terms of any settlement, eventual settlement that could result in a ceasefire? Because considering the manner in which the 2 sides, the 2 opposing sides are looking at this moment, the differences look simply intractable. With that being the case, can any resolution at this moment, can that even be reached, is of course the big question. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.